Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 33, and we're going to talk about how good ideas do not require force. We're going to cover a lot of different topics to convey this idea, but in the last episode, we talked about censorship and how people have come to believe, as even in the United States, that we need censorship to protect us from bad ideas. And, I argued probably imperfectly because I didn't want to get censored. But so today I thought we would flip it and talk about why we don't need censorship, right? And so I talked about how good ideas don't require force towards the end of the last episode, but let's talk about some examples. Um, So I hesitated to say a little bit, but in the previous episode, I wanted to say, because I kind of believe that most people recognize bad ideas, not just extremely bad ideas, but generally bad ideas, especially if we have more information. And some people who are not very bright or don't have a lot of information or are just simply naive, they make a lot of mistakes, but they learn eventually that something was a bad idea. And I was one of those people, right? So we didn't have an internet when we were younger. I didn't really have access to a lot of information. I was very sheltered when I was younger. And so then I made up a lot of stuff, right? I just tried to work out a lot of issues by myself with very little information, and I ended up making lots of mistakes. But I learned quickly and tried not to repeat my mistakes. But yes, another failing that I had was that I was extremely stubborn as well. And so lessons came hard and often they were very expensive. But luckily, most people are a lot smarter than me and they can recognize good choices. Even without a lot of information, people kind of recognize what might be a good thing. For example, cell phones. When cell phones first came out, people were kind of amazed. They were like, whoa, 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 I don't have to be tied to a phone. A lot of times I'll joke around, we'll see a picture of an old rotary phone where you have to spin the dial kind of thing. I forget, I think one of my kids asked me, what is that? And I'm like, that's a phone. But a lot of people today in today's world, they don't know what the old rotary phone was like, how it was such a pain to spin that dial to dial a number, or even the idea of a phone booth. So it would be kind of interesting to see people watch old Superman cartoons or comic books where he jumps into a phone booth. That he's sort of like, whoa, what is that? But in any case, most people recognize, hey, a cell phone where it's mobile and I can carry it around. And so a lot of people recognize that it was good, but the problem was that it was really, really expensive. And so people might see it as a good idea, but because it's so expensive, people might say, oh, it's a bad idea. See, it's so expensive. But here's the thing, in a free society, people will see that a lot of people want a cell phone, like more of the wealthier people with lots of disposable income. When they first rolled out, they were like $10,000. Not anyone could buy it. But other companies saw the price tag and they said, wow, you make a lot of profit if you sell one of those things. And so lots of other people try to make cell phones as well. And through that kind of competition, the price of the cell phone came down relatively quickly. And so it's to the point now where uh, most people have some sort of smartphone or cell phone. And so we talked about how competition is very important in the free market, competition against other producers, but also competition among the consumers as well. And that is what brings prices down, yet at the same time maintains a high level of quality, because you're not going to buy something that might kill you. You're not going to buy something that's going to break immediately. I mean, you might do that depending on your needs, but most people kind of don't want to do this. And perhaps in another episode, we'll talk about what do you call it? Intentional failure built into the products that are produced today. I don't know if this is in every country, but in the United States, certain items are built to fail at a very specific time, usually a week after the warranty expires. But that kind of failure is built into the product to get people to have to buy a new replacement item in the future instead of repairing it. But that's for another day. That's kind of how society has become today. But in any case, the competition with other companies to make money is generally what holds companies accountable, right? If you try to raise your prices, but all your competitors are keeping their prices low, no one's going to buy your stuff. So you need other businesses producing the same product, forcing you to have to improve and maintain, or at the very least, maintain the quality of your product. And I think we talked about toilet paper in an earlier episode. I tried to remember which episode it was, but yeah, you know, even though there's only 30 some episodes, yeah, I gave up after looking through 10 of them, which I suspected might have had toilet paper. But in the short of it is that, let's just say once upon a time, there was a certain kind of toilet paper, but there was only one kind. It wasn't very good and it was very expensive. So someone says, hey, I can make a better toilet paper. They do all the investment, they figure out how to make better toilet paper, and so they come to market with a much less expensive yet high quality toilet paper. And other people see that there's a good product that people really, really want. They really desire it. And so they go into the toilet paper making business as well. But the first company that did it sees that other people are getting into the market. They can see their profit margin going down. And so what they do is they come up with different versions of their product. So they come up with two-ply toilet paper. They come up with different colored toilet paper, scented toilet paper, quilted toilet paper, all kinds of toilet paper. And even one might even say they may come up with baby wipes, like moist toilet paper, or even maybe even do away with toilet paper with bidets. And so you have this constant pressure to continually to improve your product or offer varieties, different choices within that product field. And so competition does that for all of us. And we don't need government to try to keep us safe, because the the corporations trying to make money against their competitors, they do that for us, right? So as soon as one company starts producing a bad product or a toxic product, well, they go out of business because there are alternatives. Here's an example. War. Is war a good thing or a bad thing? These days in the United States, apparently a lot of people believe that war is a great idea, even though I have had a couple of episodes talk about war indirectly as examples. But let's just say you haven't heard those episodes. And so our war, is it a good idea or not? Most people in America today will say, oh, well, we got to go to war because our government is always right. It's always just. And so we're protecting freedom by going to war. Yeah, right. If the United States goes to war, it's for freedom. It's for something good. So most people would be pro-war, and the media cooperates with the government and spins the narrative in a favorable way, hides all of the dirt, hides all of the real reasons we're going to war. And so now public opinion thinks favorably of war. But what if you had to pay for your opinion? So, for example, if you say war is good, well, then you have to pay for it, right? If you support the war, you're going to support it by either joining the military to go and fight or by paying for the war. And so let's just say, I don't know how many billions of dollars the United States has spent on a conflict going on over there in Eastern Europe. which shall remain nameless for censorship issues. But let's just say many, many billions were spent, and you said, "Oh, I support the war." All of a sudden, presto, an IRS agent shows up at your door and says, "Okay, your share of the war is $100,000, and so you now have to give the government $100,000 to help pay for the war, which you said is a great idea." Uh, in other words, you have to pay for that opinion. Or if you don't have $100,000, well, here's your draft notice. So now go and fight. Most people, if they're confronted with the actual cost, right, they themselves have to pay for the war, which is what it used to be like in the United States, right? You had to pay, you had to fund the war, you had to support the war by buying war bonds, right? Um, then people say, yeah, okay, maybe not, right? And so because government has so effectively come up with ways to hide the cost, then they can focus on moral positions, like what sounds like a good idea. If I uh, explain it to you in this subjective way, which makes the war seem like a great idea, well, of course, I mean, it doesn't cost anything to say, sure, that sounds like a great idea. But of course, it's not free. There is a huge price tag. And so what we want to have is a competition of ideas, the free market of ideas. So the free market not only buys and sells products, but also ideas. There's competition of ideas. And so in the same way that we said in the last episode, censorship means that you get rid of competition. So certain ideas, especially if they're bad ideas, they have a monopoly. And so people are forced to take that idea as so-called truth. But in a free market, right, everything is subjective. People will believe what they want to believe based on how that information sits with them, what it enables them to do, what it enables them to see, believe, etc. And the great thing about the free market is that several ideas, several subjectivities, or many subjectivities can be put into action all at the same time, right? So the way we have it now through censorship and regulations and all these regulatory things, the government involvement in social media, there's only one, right? This is what is decided to be true, and so everyone has to act on this piece of information, right? In other words, you have to believe it. But in the free market, there is no restriction, right? You have everyone can act on their subjectivity, and it's all good, right? All of the ideas are put into motion, and then everyone else gets to decide what they want to do. A couple of examples. Once upon a time when videotape was a big thing, then beta or VHS. I don't know if you remember these things. And then came Blu-ray or HD DVD. And there was always the struggle, which product is going to win, etc. Then word processing, my favorite word processing program was WordPerfect. But then, of course, Microsoft Word came to dominate the word processing dominion even today. You have horses and buggies, and what do you call it, stagecoach, and then there was the train, and then there was the plane, right? And so people got to be able to choose the mode of transportation that they wanted, and today we can see them next to each other, right? So it's a choice. And then you also have the automobile in addition to that. There are many factors of determining which mode or what choice is going to be the most successful. But even if it is the most successful, chances are that even if it does come to dominate the market, the risk that's there, the potential threat to that product is innovation, right? So VHS for quite some time said, yes, we dominate the market. And then came Blu-ray and HD DVD, right? So innovation always provides not just the threat in the negative way, but the way for the industry, for life, for society to continue moving forward. So everyone is always thinking about increased efficiency, higher productivity. safer products, right? So products that are not only cheaper, but safer at the same time. Henry Ford, when he came out with the assembly line, and I believe that the assembly line idea came from someplace in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves correctly. Well, cars used to be unaffordable for most people. He comes along, introduces the assembly line. They not only are the cars produced are less expensive, but they're produced much, much more quickly. And that's one reason why the price came down. They were able to produce them quickly. So instead of having like one car per day, now you have 100, 1,000, 10,000 cars per day. And so now the price point becomes lower. So signals that some people may use to decide whether something is a good idea or not. It makes work easier, faster, you can do more, it makes your work better, or perhaps something is more entertaining. There's more appeal to it without some kind of downside to it. And of course, if it's more affordable. Now that we talk about those signals, see, this is where cheating or con artists, confidence men, right? So people who are going to deceive and mislead people and cheat people out of their money, that becomes the potential, because they can present something which looks like it's a great idea, but actually it's not. So which ideas are good or bad? It becomes tricky. So you need access to information. I'll give you an example which looks like it would be cheating, but not actually. So cheating is a broad term of changing the way you do it, where things are a lot easier. So cheating on a test, oh wow, it's so easy, I got 100 so easily. But of course, it's not a long-term thing, because people will assume you're an expert, but really you have no information, and that will come out very, very soon. But what about cheating on building materials? So there's one form of cheating where you're going to try to increase your profit by using less of what you're supposed to be using. So I remember people would use less rebar, right? Reinforcement in the concrete, which makes the concrete weaker, and so buildings would collapse. But there is another way to increase the profit and lower the cost of construction, and that's prefabrication, right? So in other countries, in some countries, people make the parts of a building in one location and ship it to the construction location, and the building goes up very, very quickly. It's very, very strong. And so there was a video from several years ago. I'm sure that China has made improvements in the method, but I saw a 57-story building be complete in 19 days, right? Imagine what that would do to cost, to the way skylines in cities, what that would say about homelessness, right? And so instead of doing the government way of solving homelessness, just bring in fast building, and you can build a homeless facility, a facility for homeless people, and you solve homelessness in a month. But of course, politically, it's not possible. And so here we engage in massive amounts of subjectivity. Why we can't do it? Oh, it's unsafe, you know, et cetera, et cetera. The point is that there is risk everywhere. But if we allow ideas to flow freely, that we're not going to allow corrupt government with their own agendas and their favorite companies that they want to give money to that are owned by their friends, you know, if we move away from that, then there are good ideas everywhere. But now, which good idea are you going to invest in? Which idea are you going to use? In other words, someone may always come up with a better way. And so if you put all of your marbles, all of your money in one idea, and it turns out that it becomes superseded by another idea, then there's potential loss there. And this constant threat of someone else doing something better using your idea is always there. And this is why you have in the United States intellectual property and patent laws and all this other kind of stuff. But all of that in a free society, none of that exists. And I'll give you one example. I'll talk about it briefly, but I'll point you to where you can watch it for free. If you go on YouTube, there was a series. I know, don't roll your eyes too much. It was called American Genius, and it was a series, and one episode was the Wright brothers versus Curtis. And so the Wright brothers, we know, quote unquote, invented the airplane, did flight for the first time. But what they do with it? They just sat on it. There's no Wright brothers airlines. There's no Wright brothers jet company. No, this other guy, Curtis, he saw the idea of the plane and he saw all the possibilities. He started building planes that could land on the water, a seaplane. He built planes that could land on a ship, an aircraft carrier type situation. He built all of these different kinds of planes, and every time he did, he was sued by the Wright brothers because they held all the patents. And so the problem there is that not sharing the idea, not allowing for competition, meant that the technology just sort of doesn't go anywhere. But the great thing is that patent laws stop at the border of the country. And so the government finally had to come into this legal battle between the Wright brothers and Curtis and say, hey, you guys have to stop this because World War I is raging in Europe. They all have an air force, they have pursuit fighters, they've got bombers, they've progressed so much further with airplane technology. We have nothing. And so you guys have to cut it out and then, engage in developing better airplanes, right? And so while the US was in the dark, fighting over these, who has rights of building a plane and who's doing the patent infringement, whatever, other countries not bound by the same laws took those ideas and developed it far further than Curtis or Wright the Wright brothers were able to do. And so they may fight, but the rest of us, the regular people, we benefit. This process is what keeps corporations in line. It keeps corruption very, very difficult to foster within government. And always the average consumer in the street, that's like people like you and me, we get access to great products, right? And one thing that I always like to say in class is, where's my bullet train, right? You have other countries with bullet trains, super fast trains. America has yet to even think about having one, right? And so there's that thing. The more there is government regulation deciding what is safe, what is good, what is bad, telling us what is a good idea, the more we have that, the less we have good things, nice things, incredible things. Okay, that's it for this episode. It went a little long. Sorry about that. I will see you in the next one.